Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Voyager Class Constructicon MIXMASTER. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 8 of the Voyager assortment, and represents MIXMASTER's appearance in the 2009 film Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Coming in as the 5th Studio Series Constructicon, it's no surprise that MIXMASTER transforms into yet another construction vehicle. Naturally, MIXMASTER is a cement mixing truck, or more specifically, a licensed Mac Granite. Though his vehicle mode proportions are quite a bit longer and narrower than those of the original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class figures, a cursory Google Images search verifies that this is indeed a well-proportioned and accurate rendition of that truck, or at least its base chassis. Unfortunately, the most accurate truck recreation in the world wouldn't look too great with MIXMASTER's colors. Silver accents on the appropriate areas, such as the grille and wheel rims, are all that break up MIXMASTER's dull dark grays and black. There are a pair of silver rings on the mixing drum itself, but unfortunately doesn't have the massive Decepticon symbols as seen in the film and on the original Voyager figure. I'm sure Toy Hacks will have some labels to give MIXMASTER his massive insignias, but I hate stickers, so I'll just bitch about the lack of tampagraphs. One detail that this figure has that the original doesn't, however, is the Deceptisigil masked dog hood ornament. The cab itself is wonderfully detailed, with sculpted Mac logos and painted blue-gray windows. The back of the truck is far worse. While the pouring mechanisms are all present, so are both of MIXMASTER's hands and feet, just hanging out back there. Before I go any further, I want to stress that overall I think the alternate mode is great, albeit a little dull, but it kinda shits the bed here, with hardly any attempt to hide these blatant robot parts. Shameful. For you smooth brains in the audience who lack the motor skills necessary to transform the original Revenge of the Fallen MIXMASTER, the Studio Series offering is for you. This figure's transformation is far simpler, with fewer moving parts to worry about. The way the arms are formed is somewhat similar to the original, but that's due to MIXMASTER's design in general. For conversion into robot mode, the cab remains almost entirely unchanged. You'll see why in a few minutes. The smokestacks swing around and a central spire raises, and that's it for that chunk of vehicle. By virtue of MIXMASTER's design, the mixing drum is a hollow shell that splits apart and drapes down his arms. The top two shells actually come separate in the package, along with the front of his cab. Much like MIXMASTER's transformation, attaching them is no difficult task. Studio Series MIXMASTER might just be the single widest Transformer in my collection compared to its height, probably even beating out Studio Series Bone Crusher. His shoulder width is definitely taller than he is, I can assure you of that. Much like most Bayverse Decepticons, MIXMASTER is very inhuman, despite being one of the more humanoid Decepticons in the film. With his wide stance, his mixing drum quarters resembling insectoid carapace shells, and his downturned two-digit hands, he has something of a resemblance to a praying mantis, albeit a desiccated one. The head sculpt is likewise very bug-like, though not at all like a praying mantis. The torso, while small and overshadowed by the massive drum shells, is very nicely detailed, and the bursting support struts and smokestacks provide a very neat and dynamic effect. The legs are a bit underdeveloped, malnourished, and would probably be vestigial if they weren't propping him up. They're also just a smidge loose, which brings us to the huge honking backpack. Now, Revenge of the Fallen MIXMASTER also had the entire cab hanging off his back, though Studio Series MIXMASTER's is far higher up, throwing off the center of mass a little more. Studio Series MIXMASTER also lacks the original's missile launcher, as well as the entire poorly defined attack mode, but still has a sticky-uppy bit behind his head. Now I would say something like, oh, MIXMASTER is really mixing up my review format insofar that I'm not doing the articulation segment as the very last thing before my closing remarks, but this isn't my first Constructicon, so I can't really say that. Starting at the head, he has a ball joint that can look all the way around, but it's mostly on a sideways angle. It mostly just turns around this way rather than this way, but he has a neck joint, But he also has a neck joint that can allow him to look up and look down. In coordination with the ball joint, he can look all the way up, and he can look that far down, which isn't too bad. It's not too great, but I have seen worse. The shoulders, due to transformation, can butterfly themselves inwards just a little bit and butterfly themselves outwards just a little bit, so he can puff out his chest and be like, "Ooh, I am the alpha male. I am the alpha male. Mate with me and pop my head off." The shoulders rotate all the way around 360 degrees on this nice swivel joint, and they can also move all the way outwards. So it's your boy, the ultimate T-pose! At the bicep, there's a swivel that has a 360 degree arc of rotation, and the elbows can bend less than 90 degrees, which I do not like. The hands can also move up, so he can be like, "Hi, Dave." He has nothing at the waist due to transformation, considering that the entire torso locks into the cab section, so a waist joint would be impractical, nearly impossible, also due to the fact that the legs can unhinge like that from their joints. Speaking of the legs, the thighs can go all the way forward for an extremely high kick. I wonder if he can take balance in this pose. Hey! And as you can see here, his fingers aren't even touching the floor, so he is balancing on that foot. So these feet are actually really good for keeping him stable, as much as it doesn't look like it, considering how much mass is on the back here and how much mass is away from the torso. So these feet really do help. They have a nice heel spur, and they have a nice side spur to help balance these arms. So they may not look like much. So while they may not look like much, they do help balance. It's just that the joints that they're connected to aren't the strongest. So if anything's going to give, it's going to be these hips, not these feet. The thighs swivel in a 360 degree arc, and the knees actually have a 90 degree bend, which is great. And finally at the ankle can curl in for some even more added effect for that knee bend, which is very appreciable. So MIXMASTER is very poseable. He's really poseable, probably one of the more poseable of the Constructicons that I've looked at so far, and he can hold a wide variety of poses considering how many joints he has. It's just that these hip joints are a little too weak for all that mass up top.
You ever see that film Gunfight at OK Corral? Okay, neither did I. I'm assuming that it didn't start with parts forming. The transformation into MIXMASTER's third mode does, which is something of a shame, though considering the sheer amount of joints present in the cab, it's somewhat forgivable. The face of the mighty Devastator unfurls from what's left of the cab, and from there the mixing drum splits apart and reforms into a staggered carapace that will someday be Devastator's neck. The legs sort of loop around underneath, and the front of the cab that was removed gets pegged back in at the back. Wow, this is certainly a bit of Devastator. I think for now I should just focus on the face sculpt, since I don't have a scavenger just yet to see how well all this integrates into the combined mode, yeah? Devastator's face is extremely well detailed and coated in a nice deep red paint. He has 10 eyes, each picked out in a nice toxic green. The jaw opens, but sadly doesn't unhinge and come apart like it does in the movie. I'm sorry to say that recreating the vortex mouth scene will be pretty much impossible. Still, this is promising to be one good-looking Devastator. Studio Series MIXMASTER is one of the stronger entries to the Studio Series Constructicon lineup, which in and of itself have been some of the best figures in the line to date. So far, I'd say he's only outclassed by Scrap Metal and Long Haul, some of my favorite figures in the line. MIXMASTER really latches on to the Revenge of the Fallen design aesthetic and runs off with it, and I'm all the more happy for it. I'd say Studio Series MIXMASTER is well deserving of the rank of lovely. If you liked this video or otherwise found it helpful or informative, then please consider subscribing for more reviews like this in the future, so you can join me for my next review, where I'll be taking a look at Transformers Siege Deluxe Class Autobot Impactor. This has been Kit Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.